All right, welcome to the stream, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. Let me know if the audio is fine. There might be one issue with the stream, and that is if my camera runs out of battery, you need to tell me immediately if the audio will become completely weird, because that has happened so far every time, and it happened today even while I was recording a video. So let's hope it doesn't happen, because I hate if half of the stream is very jittery and so on. So yeah, that's that. Hopefully everyone is having a good day. We are going to do Photoshop again. So this is a part 2 stream to the stream I did earlier. I don't remember if it was this week. Most likely it wasn't this week. But yeah, we are gonna get started within the next few minutes. So if you have any general questions to me right now, feel free to ask them. And also, since the last stream, I've gone almost bald. Yeah, I didn't have a mental breakdown. I just decided to try a different style, and I at least like it. It's very round. I feel weird. Like doing this feels very strange without almost any hair. But yeah, hello everyone. Hello Photoshop recipes. Hello artist editor. I can't see names. I just see, I guess I see a channel name or something like that. Blue Harlow, hello there. How's everyone doing? So, hello 88, or Adia, that's how I would say in Finnish. Hi Manuel. So I'm just checking here on my end that everything is working properly. It should be. I also upped the microphone volume this time. Last time some of you were complaining that the volume from the microphone is not high enough. So now it's quite high. So if it starts to hurt some of your ears, just put your volume down a little bit. Yeah, we didn't really left off anywhere within the last stream. I sort of just stopped it because we had gone for 2 hours. And I think we are just going to do the exact same way as we did the part 1 stream. And for the people who weren't in the first stream, basically you can just ask me whatever about Photoshop, whatever you want to see, and I will try to show you how to do that. I've been editing in Photoshop for the past 5 years. I have at least 10,000+ hours of editing time in the program, of just trying to figure out different things and the best workflows for me. So you get to now pick my brain about the program and how I use it. So use the chance wisely and try to just ask questions other than how to blend. Because yeah, just try to go a bit more in detail. Like if you have a very specific issue with your own images, for example, you can ask those type of things. I want to be helpful for each and every one of you. So if you have any very, very detailed issues with Photoshop, for example, I will go through those if you want me to, but I will only go through things based on how people ask me. Why did you cut your hair? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I just decided to do it. It was too late after I started. I don't know. I've always had this strange relationship with my hair. I like my hair when it's short from the top, and then sort of maybe a little bit longer from the top and then short from the sides. That's how I usually have it. But if I let my hair grow, it grows into an afro and it becomes really curly and sort of greasy pretty quickly because the hair is so thick. So I decided now that it's summer and I've started going to the gym again, it's more pleasant not to have hair. And now I don't have to worry about it. Whenever I do something, I'm like, oh, but I should probably do something with my hair. And then I remember, oh, I don't have hair. And that's perfect. And also after shower, it literally takes 2 seconds to dry it. So that's a bonus as well. Bro, your background, some lighting. What do you mean? Yeah, I have this light here. By the way, it's not even in the scene. I have this scene, and then the blue light that is added comes from this thing. So there's a LED panel. How do I turn it? There's an LED panel like that causes the light to the wall. I think it looks cooler. It separates me better from the background when I have this. Where should I put it? Something like that. There's that annoying shadow from the lamp, but that's just how it is. Okay. Now the lamp is somewhat in the scene. Most likely I'm gonna be in front of it all the time, but whatever. Yo, who is this guy? Is he new? Never seen this streamer before. Yeah, I'm very new, especially with this. Some people said that I look Russian, and I have Russian roots, so yeah. Yeah, it's different, but it's awesome. Thank you. Why don't you live stream regularly? Isn't it regular now? I'm at least trying to do it quite regularly, and maybe I should even stick to a weekly schedule. But every time I promise something and I don't do it, then I feel really bad about it myself. So most likely I won't be able to promise. And I've sort of learned within the past 5 years that if I promise something and I'm not able to keep up with it, it just like makes me feel worse as a person. So I try not to promise anything, but live streaming is definitely something I'll be doing more often. There's some traveling that I will be doing this year still. So during those weeks, of course, I can't do anything, like anything streaming or edit or video related. But I'm trying to get, I think this is sort of my bridge towards actually making YouTube videos. Like starting streaming on YouTube is my gateway to maybe then starting making videos. And we'll see how that goes. I have a strange relationship with YouTube, so we have to see how that goes. I have just like your haircut and I know what you're talking about. Yeah, literally, it's so easy to take care of it. And now I feel like even after one day, I've grown to like it now. That I'm not sure if I want to even grow it. And now that it's even size everywhere, I'm most likely going to grow a really massive afro if I would just keep growing it, because it grows evenly from everywhere. So most likely I will just keep it short now for the next months. But hey, let's get started with the stream. No one seems to have any like super important questions. So I'm going to switch the scene to Photoshop and you can start asking questions. And I hope there are questions. Please ask me questions, because this is awkward if there's no questions and I need to come up with something myself. So just whatever you want to know about Photoshop, now's the time to start asking. Can you make me a logo for free? No, Mike. No thanks. No. Yeah, just start asking me questions when you see the program here. I don't really know what I should do here. Also, I have a drawing tablet, but I never use a drawing tablet. I bought a Intuos Pro. I still haven't touched it when I bought it, because Michelle needed it for some projects and I thought that I'm going to use it then as well, like continuing from there on. But I haven't really found myself using it. Can you show us again that brush technique with Gaussian blur to soften edges? Can you show us again that brush technique with Gaussian blur to soft edges? Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I'm not exactly sure. Like that doesn't bring immediately to my mind what to show. So could you give me an example where I could use that? Because I don't really know what that means. My brain went to one technique, but it doesn't have anything to do with Gaussian blur. So I'm not sure. Bro, I'm a big fan of your work. Thanks for keeping inspiring. Thank you really much. Thank you really much. Thank you a lot. I want to know how to make a car with multiple windows as one long window. I mean, what brush should I use? I want to know how to make a car with multiple windows as one long. This I also don't understand what it means. I'm sorry about that. Can you show us again that brush technique with Gaussian blur to soften edges? Yeah. Now, Mike, you saved me in this case. So let's say I can probably show it also by just brushing. Like I could show it with an image, but let's pretend now that this is an image that I'm brushing here. So I'm just brushing a black dot there. And I'm going to create a mask on this dot by clicking Ctrl and then on the layer. And this creates a mask. So if I now hold Option or Alt on Windows, you can see that this is the mask. We have revealed the black dot, but everything else is masked out. So now if I would start brushing black here, you can't see it because it's masked behind this black area. And immediately if I brush white here and I come out of here, then you can see that this area is now black. So that is sort of the way how you can mask. And then if you want to soften the edges, instead of blurring the whole circle, in this case, if I would start blurring that, then you wouldn't see anything happen. So if I would just start to blur this, nothing happens. But if you want to blur the edges, why is everything lagging? Yeah, if you want to blur the edges of something to just blend two objects together a bit better, you click on the mask and then you select the blur tool and you put the strength down a little bit, and then you can blur the edges of that. And if I can actually do it with a little bit less strength so you can see. So now that only blurs the edge of the mask instead of blurring the content inside the mask. So only the mask is getting blurred. So the edge of white and black is becoming softer, which creates like the soft pixel transition from one rock to another, for example, if you have multiple rocks layered on top of each other. Otherwise, there's going to be a really rough, unrealistic edge between elements, and that's not usually how it works in nature. Usually the camera, when you capture something, it softens the edges and the transition is more of a gradient instead of being like really rough. So that's sort of the thing that I think you meant. Yeah, it was that. Thanks. Okay, yeah, that's that. How to match background with subject, that I showed already in the last stream. So if you're interested in blending and these type of things, you can check that from the last stream because I went over that very in depth there. What else? Blue Harlow, could you elaborate a little bit on that you want to make a car with multiple windows as a long window? Like, I don't really know what that means, sorry. Last stream you show us how to soft edges. Yeah, this was about the thing that I just showed. What resolution should I use for projects? I usually end up with projects over 5 gigabytes and it gets incredibly slow. So I think I make my projects way too big. Thanks. So one thing you need to understand about Photoshop is that in Photoshop, you do not need to use as many layers as you are used to use. If your projects are gonna get to like 5 gigabytes or something like that, it most likely means that you are doing things like, for example, creating 10 different layers for different brush strokes, or every time you sort of overdo the amount of layers and the amount of effects you put there, when instead you could just have one overlay layer and brush more onto that. I feel like a lot of people who create especially composites have the workflow of just adding up layers on top of layers, and that increases the file size unnecessarily amounts. So the way how I would like myself do it would be to for example, let's say we have a layer here which is now black, and you want to brush something to this layer. Instead of doing it in a way that you first add one layer and you start brushing something here, and then you decide suddenly that, okay, now this layer, I want to keep it separate. And then you keep adding layers on top of layers, and you just keep brushing separately to these, and sometimes even with the same color or the layer set to overlay, for example, and you keep on adding too many effects on top of each other, and that increases the file size. I personally use 4000 by 5000 pixels, and I've done some incredibly challenging projects and big projects, but I don't reach 5 gigabytes even nearly nowadays for those projects. And it's simply because I know how to optimize the workflow to the point where I don't need to overuse layers. So if you don't have a fast computer and your projects tend to start lagging towards the end, it's most likely because you use too many layers. So you should definitely like avoid using too many layers. What do you mean you need at least 500 layers? No, it's definitely not about the layers. I can do everything in one layer if I want. It's of course you want to keep things separate. I know like it makes more sense to separate effects if you are like very tedious about your artistic process. But in my opinion, if you have an overlay brushing layer, which means that you would be brushing highlights or something like that, you don't need 10 different highlights for this rock and then that rock. And I sort of like to be more broad with my effects and then use the layer masks instead of always add new layers. So that's just my point of view on it. But Photoshop is not like super heavy. So if you have a relatively like normal computer, you should be able to run Photoshop without running into like extremely bad issues. As far as I'm concerned, Mike is using a laptop, and as he said, he's not like running into a lot of problems. So yeah, merge it together and keep the original folder turned off. That's an alternative way to do it. So let's say you create these amount of layers and you brush something to all of these separately. Instead of keeping these like that, what Mike is referring to is that you would, wait a second, I am so used to using my Stream Deck. So what Mike is referring to is that you would duplicate all and combine it, and then you would group these, and then basically keep this as the originals, and then you sort of save on space, because now when this is off, it's not considering these layers to the file size. Or probably it is considering them to the file size, but not as heavily when you are like editing. So whatever is visible, it's gonna continuously put load on your computer. So this is one way to do it. And if you were wondering why I did it now with the Stream Deck, it's just like I'm trying to practice to use it as much as possible to just speed up my workflow. So yeah, let's see. I mean like a car like Tahoe or any car. It has 3-door window on each side. I want to make it one long window using Photoshop. Like that sounds a thing that you can just do with the clone stamp tool. Like you could just use the clone stamp tool to do that. Or if you, I mean, I would just need to see what you mean, because that's really hard to understand. I'm sorry if I don't like get what you mean, but let's say, let me open up Unsplash here. So let's do a car. So you mean that you would want to combine to make, for example, this window now one long window instead of being two separate windows? Is that simply what you mean with what you are saying? Because if that's what you mean, then, I mean, you have to take in consideration the frame, of course, here. But other than that, this is just normal clone stamping. You would clone stamp the frame here together. But I will wait for your answer. Just say yes in the chat if that's what you mean, and then I will... Yeah, exactly, yes. Okay, I will show you soon how I would approach that, because this is only clone stamping to my knowledge. That's incredibly useful information. Thank you, man. No worries. What means 8-bit, 16-bit, and 32-bit? So these are just different amount of color detail in your image. 8-bit is what is used the most on the web. So this is what is the most commonly you see on web. If you edit in 16-bit or 32-bit, when you save your image out as a JPEG and you upload it to the internet, it's gonna look very different than it would look if you actually edit on 8-bit. I recommend everyone to edit in 8-bit just for the sake of the fact that most people look at images nowadays on their phones or on the web. So it's hardly ever nowadays they would need like a lot of color detail to the point they would need to use 32-bit like stuff. I personally use it only in 3D because it allows you for a higher dynamic range, at least to my knowledge in 3D. When you export lossless format in 32-bit, I can edit it way better. I can bring the highlights down more and the shadows like down more. Like I can just keep on editing it like raw file basically. But this has now nothing to do with Photoshop being set to 32-bit. Like that doesn't itself change that many things. But you can see it. If I now come here to the mode and I set it to 32-bit and I hit merge here, you can see that the colors change because there's so many more shades of colors. So if you pay very close attention here to the colors, when I change between, let's put this now to 8-bit, you can see that there's way less variation in the color tone here. And when I change this to 32-bit, you can see that there's way like smoother of a gradient from white to blue because there's just way more shade there. But also the color, the way how the color looks changes. Here in the 32-bit, the reds look a little bit pinkish, at least to my eye. And then here in the 8-bit, it looks like an actual red that we are used to seeing on the web, for example. So I would just be careful with those. I just keep it, it's like a rule of thumb to keep it at 8-bit and you should be good to go. So just remember that. Right, let me check the chat again. Then it's me yesterday with 3 fog brush layers. Yeah, exactly. That like, you sort of, if you're brushing fog over the whole image, you don't necessarily need to separate the layers to fog behind this person or fog behind this rock. You can just do general fog, unless you need to put the layer below something in a way that it needs to be under a rock, for example. Then you need to, of course, do separate fog layers. But if you do general fog at the end, you don't need more than one layer for that. And then you have to take in consideration if you do separate colors for the fog, maybe it's then good to separate blue fog and yellow fog. These are just things that you need to consider, and it's all about optimization. Okay, let me now download, for example, this image here to show quickly how I would approach making this into one window now, because it's fairly simple. We just need to open it up here in Photoshop. But by the way, before I show this, I want to show you one setting that could be useful to some of you in Photoshop. So as you could see, when I dragged the image, where is the browser? When I dragged this image from here to my Photoshop, you can see that it automatically opens in Camera Raw, either how do you say it? Even though this is a JPEG image. Normally it would just go there because it has nothing to do with editing RAW. It's a JPEG. But I've set a setting in Photoshop in a way that no matter what image I open in Photoshop, it always opens up in Camera Raw first, because that's where I start my editing process for everything basically. So if I'm creating a composite, I first try to match all of my elements in Camera Raw before I even start cutting things out. And I want just images to open up in Camera Raw like that. So in order to do this, you can come up to Edit and then Preferences, and then you can go to File Handling. And here in File Handling, you have the file compatibility here, and there's a button called Camera Raw Preferences. When you click on Camera Raw Preferences, you can go to File Handling from here, and then it says JPEG and TIFF handling. And I've set both of these automatically open all supported JPEGs in Camera Raw, automatically open all TIFFs in Camera Raw. So this is very helpful for people who want to do composite editing in the same way as me, that they always start in Camera Raw, because then you save one extra step. You don't have to first open the image and then bring it to Camera Raw. It brings it automatically. And at least for me, this is the case in every image. No matter what image I use, it's always to Camera Raw first. So yeah, that's just a quick tip for all of you. All right, let me show this. So first off, I would recommend doing either one of these. So never clone stamp into the original layer itself, because when you're clone stamping, you're most likely going to bring your history state up. You can set different amounts of history steps here. So if you have set it to 50, then you have 50 steps here, and then you can't go steps back anymore. And if you do it on one layer, you are basically messed up if you want to go back more steps than that. You can set it to, I think, up to 200 or even more, but that's going to really affect your memory on your computer, and the program is going to slow down if you have a lot of history states. If you are interested to bring more history states here, you can go to preferences. I don't remember exactly what the menu is, but I think it is, I guess it would be history log. No, it's not history log. Wait a second. It is somewhere here. Units and rulers. Performance. Yeah. So in performance, there's history states. You can bring this up to 1000. I don't really need it. I usually just do everything in separate layers, so I will never have the issue of having to go that many steps back. So I just keep mine at 50. But this basically just tells the amount of steps you're gonna have like up in here. So instead of doing it on this layer, I would duplicate this layer by hitting Ctrl J on your keyboard. You can do either this, or you can create a new layer. And when you have created a new layer, you can go to, by the way, why do I have all of these here? This should be docked inside there. Okay. Yeah, so you can go to the clone stamp tool, and you can set the sample from the top here to current and below. This means that when I sample a point here, it's going to take in consideration the data under this layer, the current layer and the layers below. So if I now sample a point here, you can see that I can clone this point wherever I want in the image. If this is set to current and I just hit Alt or Option on Mac and click here, nothing happens because it's only taking the information from the layer itself. So you can use a blank layer, set it to current and below, and then you can start clone stamping. Or you can duplicate the layer and start doing on top of this, but then you are a bit limited with it because you're actually clone stamping on top of the already existing data instead of just starting from fresh, like blank layer. So I would actually recommend just to keep the empty layer here. I'm just trying to like really simplify certain things to understand the deeper meanings, why we do things in Photoshop. That's, in my opinion, the best way to learn. Yeah. Let's see. Mike is planning to get a PC. Got the money, but prices need to drop. Really don't want to pay 3x the price. Yes, don't. Even I was like thinking like, should I buy my graphics card at 1,000 euros, which was literally only 200 euros above the market price at the time, and now they're like crazy 3,000 euros or something. So just wait. I wouldn't buy one either now. Nice cut, dude. Yeah, me and Kaim both got the new cut. 50. I got mine at 20. Yeah, you're gonna be so pleased when you are finally gonna update your gear and you're able to edit without lag. Like that's like such a good feeling. Hi there, Julius. Do you apply Chromatic aberration in your final artwork as many artists use it nowadays? And what is your opinion about it? For hyperrealism, I guess you should add a little bit of it. So Chromatic aberration is just the type of green, this type of like artifacting on edges. You can see it here very dominantly, a bit of this. I need to change my tool. You can see it here on the edges. Clearly from this image, I feel like whoever has edited this has removed it already. But quite often in raw images, for example, you see a little bit of difference in colors at the very edge. I don't necessarily like that effect. I hate it if I have it in my photos, so I take it always off. Even though it probably would add an extra layer of realism, but no, I don't use it. So now that we have the separate layer here, we can start clone stamping. So if you want to combine these two windows together, you first would have to decide from which side do you start to clone stamp. And in this case, you sort of need to keep in mind which one of these windows do you want to be the more permanent look. In this case, I think this looks cleaner, so I would probably start from this side. And simply the way how I would do it is that I would first do the frame itself. So I would clone stamp the frame together, and this is pretty straightforward. I would just make sure that I have a straight line here and position my clone stamp here and just start clone stamping away. And this is how I would do the initial frame. And you probably have to, if you want to make it like a bit unperfect, you could now at this point already hit Ctrl T and then select the warp tool. And with the warp tool, you can click and drag and connect these points if you want to make it a little bit less perfect. Because here you can see this is an old car. You can either way see a bit of those like lines being unstraight. So if you want at this point to adjust that, you can. And the warp tool has nowadays a new thing. When you hold Alt or Option, you can click sort of a locking point. So if I click here, it adds another point to my warp tool, and now I can adjust it from that point. If I add another point next to it, it's gonna adjust that point only, and anything that is like on the other side of it is not gonna be affected anymore. So these work sort of as your guideline points. If you want to adjust the whole thing, just grab from somewhere and you're good to go. But if you want to adjust only the tip and only the very tip, you would add another point here next to it, and now you can drag only that point down. That's usually a bit of a fine adjustment. I don't usually use that, but I would definitely use the warp tool here to make this a little bit less straight. And we can fix it a bit later on, but since these windows were on different levels, I thought it would be easier to do it like this. And you can even try to blend these two together to sort of create some sort of fading edge. I don't necessarily know if we should do it in this case, but this is literally like a bit of a meticulous process of just manually starting to bring this window together. So it is a very manual process. There's no way to automate something like this. And then when it comes to the frame here, you need to keep in mind that you need to keep that inside frame. So for this, I would probably use a selection. So I would probably create a selection quickly with the lasso tool, for example, just to create that frame selection like that. And now it will be very easy to just clone stamp a bit of whatever is behind there. Maybe you should take a bit of in consideration a little what is behind there, but we can also do that afterwards. So you need to remember, of course, the windows are see-through. So if we're gonna make this part here in the middle look like it looks here, we're most likely not gonna get a realistic result. So we need to keep in mind that there's these bushes on the back, so we need to clone stamp a little bit of that in there as well. So this is a very, very manual process. You sort of have to just go through with it. And I'm most likely not going to edit the whole thing because I just wanted to show you sort of how I would approach it. And you can see that this is just literally me clone stamping, which is the most normal process you can be working on. So I would probably leave it at something like that. And then now we have like the window pretty well connected already. And then we need to just do the top. And what comes to the top, I would probably... Let me actually think what would be the best way to go. I think the best way to go would be to just create a line here like this, and then just sort of force the clone stamp in there. So start from here, force a little bit of that line there. And then again here, I will maybe try to bring these two together with the same technique as I used here on the bottom to make it a bit less unstraight. A bit less straight. And then here you have to keep in mind that when you are editing that part, you need to make it all inside the same color as the frame. So here you would now need to clone stamp the actual color of the frame up until the point there at the top. So something like that. But I don't think I will go any more deeper into it than this. I hope that you're not bored of the answer, that you just do it with the clone stamp tool. But that's literally how I would approach it, because right now already it's starting to look like it's coming together. So if you want to combine those windows, it's a very specific thing, but as I said, this is how the streams, or how this stream is going to be. It's going to be very specific. And that you could spend hours on this, just perfecting all of these like different parts, making sure that the window actually matches pretty well. So you could do like all kinds of different adjustments here. But as I said, we are now gonna most likely leave it at something like that. It looks very odd at that point. But one thing that I want to you about still is that you can combine all of these into one layer, and you can go to the Liquify tool, and you can go to the Liquify tool. Sorry, I'm using my Stream Deck. I'm so used to using it. So if you are actually, I probably shouldn't use it as much in the stream. So if you want to go to the Liquify tool, you need to come up here to filter and then Liquify. I've set a shortcut on my Stream Deck so I can at the click of a button get there. So now with this, after you would have clone stamped this whole thing together, you could then go with the Liquify tool to adjust these lines a bit better to match. So you could bring like this whole window line down a little bit, and then you wouldn't have to do any of that annoying little adjustment here and there. So like if you use the Liquify tool, then this is the way sort of to go. I would maybe even lift this whole thing here from the middle a little bit just to match it. And now already there you can see that we fixed that balance issue that we had. So that's it. That looks pretty cool. Why don't they produce cars like that? That's a cool window. Okay, let's move on. That's how you do it. I think the hardest is the reflection. Yes, the reflection you would do, let me think what would be the best way. I will probably create another layer for that. I will clone stamp a little bit of grass somewhere like this, maybe like this part. And then I would select it and move it to the point here. And then I would double click on the layer and remove the white parts from this layer, and you can move them with this blend if slider. If you want to know more about this, I also explained this in the last stream. So with this here from the right side, we can start removing all of the brighter areas, and from the left side the darker areas. So I'm just gonna move this to the left, hit Alt or Option on Mac and separate these points so we get a softer sort of difference between these two. And then I can actually erase some of these harsh edges from this effect. And I will play around with the different blending modes to see if any of these, for example, soft light or overlay works pretty well here. And you can use the blur tool to just blur this layer. I will probably actually combine it and then blur it. Let me set it to overlay again. And blur it even more. Maybe I could grab the Gaussian blur. So blur, Gaussian blur, and just blur this a little bit more. And then I would take the opacity down a little bit. And then it would have a fake reflection there that sort of works completely fine. So something like that I would do to fake a little bit of reflection in there. So those are your options. Okay, let's move on to a next thing. Let's see. Why the color changes after I export photo? This has to do with JPEG. JPEG always changes the colors a little bit because it is a compressed photo form. It could also be that when you save an image, it saves it in a different color profile as you are working on. So if you're accidentally working in CMYK, actually one really common mistake people do is when they hit Ctrl T, they accidentally hit Ctrl Y. And if you look here to the top, if you accidentally hit Ctrl Y or Command Y, it changes your color profile. And we can clearly see the difference between CMYK and RGB. CMYK is more washed out, it changes the colors quite dramatically. So if you accidentally have your color mode at CMYK, that might be the issue. So make sure that doesn't happen. Then let's see. Hello Julius, dumb question. There's no dumb questions, but I can't display the red preview of my brushes on Photoshop. How can I enable them? The red preview, do you mean this when you are going up and down? Do you mean this red animation here? Just write yes or no to the chat or try to elaborate that question a little more and I'll let you know. Any reason why you wouldn't use the fill feature here, then clean up the edges? I guess that would be more of a faster solution to get started. So what Mike is talking about is just creating a selection here, like this. And then using, for example, the content aware fill tool here. and then hit OK. And maybe you could do this a few times. Like this way you could already fill some of these areas up and then just adjust that afterwards. I guess the reason why I don't use the fill tool for these parts is because it will always look really bad at first. And I sort of like to be able to be in control of the way how I do things straight from the beginning. I'm more of a manual guy myself. All of these automatic tools are cool and they work in quite a lot of cases. For example, here, if I would pick this handlebar and I would go to the corner aware fill, it would basically remove it perfectly for me without any issue. But since I know that this part has way more data and has these intersection points, and here like these different looking frames, the AI has a really hard time realizing how to do it or like basically where to take the information from. But if we have something like a scratch or something against orange, it's gonna always determine that better than if we have shades of blue, shades of orange, shades of green, like different colors, different structures, different edges. Like it just has a hard time sort of deciding how to do it. I'm sure, Mike, you're aware of that, but that's sort of the simple explanation why I don't use it. Yes, this is the red preview I was talking about. I only have a thin line circle and no red. So the reason why that happens, it actually took me a long time to realize why I didn't have it. So if you, first off, it might be that sometimes you hit a caps lock and then you lose the preview of your brush. This is very common. Takes one Google search to understand why that happens. So sometimes you don't have a preview of your brush at all, and when you hit caps lock, then it shows the brush again. The reason why it doesn't show the red is because you're not using your computer's graphics card from the settings. And you can go here to the preferences and then to performance. And if you unclick use graphics processor, you won't see, I mean, well, you would need to restart Photoshop. If I would now restart Photoshop, I wouldn't see them either. But make sure that you are using your graphics card. This is the only reason why it doesn't show, because you need graphics processing for that animation. And if you don't use it, then you won't see those animations. So go to performance and click the use graphics processor. If it still doesn't show up, then it could be that your tools don't have, let me see, show tool tips, show rich, enable gestures. It could be one of these settings here, but I don't see at least. Vary round brush hardness based on no. So I don't see anything here that would actually cause it. Animated zoom, no, it's not that either. So like from here you can see basically that thing. Let me see, there's somewhere a color red where I can see the, here. So brush preview, if I put this to yellow, let's say yellow, then when I zoom, the preview is going to be yellow. So you can also change the color of the preview from the tab. Which tab was it now? I never remember where it's what, I just click through. And here it could be, let me see, painting cursors, normal brush strip, full size brush tip. No, I think it's the graphics processing. That's at least how it's always been for me. So just put that on. How about flipping a brush? Sometimes I want to use refinement edge brush like yours, real marketing here, but the brush doesn't match the orientation of the edge I'm brushing. Sometimes I rotate the image to match the brush orientation, but the brush attached to the image orientation. There's two ways to approach this. I'm glad that you asked this question, because this is basically one of the issues with brushes that I thought that people who edit a lot in Photoshop would most likely run into. Because sometimes, let's say we take one brush, my Northern Light brush, for example, you want this to be the other way around. And with effects, it's easier because I could brush the effect. Let me actually take my image here. Just a second. By the way, I probably don't have any images on the computer itself. Just wait a second. I will block my hard drive in quickly. Yeah, I will block my hard drive. Ouch. The light is so close. The light is literally here, like on my face. So like when I'm sitting here, it's like super close to my eyes, which is probably not good, but I think the light looks always nice, so That's why it is so close. It's so hard to go behind my computer here because the space is so limited. But I'm making it. There we go. So now my hard drive is awaking. Let me see. We'll have a look right now and I'll tell you. Okay, good. Let me show you this brush thing now. So we can go here to the, let me change this. Okay, so I use Photo Mechanic instead of Lightroom. Works a million times faster and it's just better in my opinion in general with everything. So I mean, it lacks, you can't edit photos here. This is just for file browsing, but it works better than Lightroom. So I would go to all images and videos, trips, and then, for example, Italy. I mean, it's a bit stupid to put Northern Lights to Italy or show this for these, but I think at Tresime we took some night images. There's actually some Milky Way images we took there. Here you can see some of the images I've taken, but I'm just gonna take a normal star sky, which is gonna be this. And now again, you can notice that it opens in camera raw, but now it opens because it is actually a raw image. Can I use free 3D assets in NFT? Most likely you can't. Most likely you cannot. I at least wouldn't. So if you want to brush an effect like the Northern Lights with my brushes, this is actually a bit too big of an image, and that is the issue with Photoshop. They limit it to 5,000 pixels, which is ridiculous if you ask me. Like, you would actually have to put the Northern Lights, something like that. So if you want to flip this, the only way to do the flip an effect in a way that makes sense is just hit Ctrl T and then flip horizontal, and then you have the effect the other way around. So that's if you're using my brushes. But if you need to refine, for example, this edge here, and the brush is orientated the wrong way, you could go to my wait a second, refining. You could go to a refining brush here, and you can rotate it by clicking here. So like normally it's always pointing to the right. So if you want to rotate it, you can just click to it and then it shifts or it moves. But this doesn't flip the brush. This only rotates the brush on one axis. So like it doesn't mirror it, it just rotates it. So this is how I would like use it to rotate. And that's how I would flip with the flip horizontal, the effect itself. But if you want to actually remake the brush the other way around, that's also doable. So we could create a 5,000 by 5,000 by 5,000 canvas. And let's say, for example, this brush, you could click here with black color. So we remake the brush like this. Actually, I noticed, this is embarrassing, there's a little mistake in this brush, but I don't think anyone has ever noticed that. But yeah, if you click here and you go to edit and then define brush preset, first flip it. So Ctrl T and then horizontal, and then go to edit, define brush preset, and then you can name this Julius refining flipped. And now you have the brush here in the settings the opposite way, the actual mirrored way, if that's what you mean. So that's what you could do. You can do this for any of the brushes. So you could do the fog brush. If you like the fog brush to be another way around, you could brush just one stroke there, and then you could go to edit and flip it first, and then go to edit and then define brush preset, hit OK, and then you have the brush here. So that's how you can modify them. I think there's also a tutorial in the brush bundle itself about it, or there is actually a tutorial on how to modify it. So yeah, if you forget how to do it, or you don't remember that I did this live at some point, then just check from there. Just use sunglasses then. Yeah, sure, I will always come here in the future and edit with sunglasses. How can I use your brushes? You can use my brushes by, I mean, if you're asking directly how to purchase them, you can go, actually now I'm going to use my Stream Deck for these type of cases. So if I set my default profile, I can go to the stream and I have my website button here. So if I go to the Stream Deck, I can just, someone asks, where can I get you brushes? I can plug them. You can get them from here. This is where you can get them from. I actually have some new things here coming. I recommend all of you to wait for a while if you don't have my brushes yet, because there's going to be massive discounts to all of these naturally. So I have this creative tool bundle coming, which combines everything together. But if you want to use my brushes, you can get them from my website. I would rather buy them through ads, because the full price is always available here on the website, and I promote them through ads with the discounted price just so I stay legal, because I'm not allowed to, at least to my knowing, I'm not allowed to have constant sales going if I don't have the same product somewhere else in the actual full price. So I keep on my website the price is full, and then whenever I want to do discounts, I promote them through my ad. So if you are thinking of buying my things, just a quick tip for everyone who's watching right now, just do it when you see an ad or something like that. Then you get the cheaper price. So here you can buy them, purchase them. There's multiple. I have 10 packs currently. The thing is, I have 10 separate packs, but when you buy it, you only get the bundle, because otherwise you would need to download like 10 different files, and that doesn't make any sense, like 10 different brush files. So it's way easier for me to combine them all into one bundle. Like when you buy this, you're not going to get all of these packs in their separate products naturally. That wouldn't make any sense. So you're going to get the actual bundles then. So this complete tool bundle is just a combination of these 3 products. Yeah. It worked. I put the color of the preview in white instead of red. Oh, cool. So just remember, that's how it is. Real marketing, truly. Many websites giving new brushes for free. My classmate told me that I can't find it. Yeah, don't even try to look. Like, that's very disrespectful. If you are gonna get the brushes for free, that's straight up illegal. And since I'm a sole artist, I don't have the resources required or the time, even the time involvement into going through each case separately. I know that thousands of people have probably downloaded them from free, but these people who download them from free are unfortunately stupid people who don't want to support an artist with like couple bucks. I spend a lot of time creating tools. First you need to take in consideration that I've been traveling for years to get the images so I can create brushes out of the images that I've taken. That I don't even want to know how many hundreds of hours of time that has taken and how much money that has taken from my end to travel the world and get those images. And then after that, build an idea on a fun product to create actual effects that people can use and like to use them. And I put a really cheap price on this because I'm not stealing anyone's money. I'm not going to put a crazy €300 price for a brush pack. Because this doesn't make any sense. So if you are someone who downloads them illegally, that's bad. That's really annoying. But I'm not really losing there, because if you are downloading it illegally, most likely you would have never purchased the product in the first place. So that's sort of the way how I think about it. People who download stuff illegally would never buy them in the first place. Which do you prefer for color matching, curves or color balance? What is your favorite tool when color matching? Curves, by far curves. I would say probably nowadays even more camera raw. Like I just love how quickly you can open camera raw and just adjust simple things from it. The only negative aspect to camera raw is that it will make the effect permanent unless you use it as a smart object. So I would, like, if you're creating composites, probably curves is your best bet to go for color matching and in general just adjusting colors. But as I said in my last stream, the only two things you need for color matching is hue and saturation and curves. That's it. Do you still plan to create new Photoshop courses? So I'm a bit on the edge with that. The reason why I'm in the edge with Photoshop courses is that I hit the market. If we're talking simply about business, I hit the market with courses very early on. And I was very fortunate to make a good amount of income from courses when I first started. And I probably still could do that. I'm probably going to do that. But if I want to create a Photoshop course, it's going to be a really, really, really big course. And I am going to do it. It's really hard for me at this point of my career to find 2-3 months of time just filming and editing. I would have to most likely outsource the editing part of the course in order to be able to get it done. And since I have so many other projects, so far I haven't felt the need or found the necessary time for me to actually create it. But I have promised to all of my students that there is going to be a Photoshop for Photographers 2.0. Most likely I'm going to name it something different, and it's going to be a complete separate product from it. But people who have gotten my Photoshop for Photographers course will get access to the new course for free. And it's going to be, to my calculations, I've already planned the course as well. There's hundreds of lessons in it, and the length would be about 17 to 19 hours, depending how long the lessons last for. So yeah, it's going to be a huge course. And the thing with courses is the longer a course is, the less people are actually going to watch it through. So I'm having a hard time in my brain deciding, should I do shorter courses or one really long course? From money and business aspect, it makes sense for me to create a longer course and put a higher price on it than create a really cheap course. And I wouldn't feel that fulfilled with it, because it would literally be something that you could check pretty quickly from online. But with a long course, there's so many nuggets and so many tiny pieces of information that I could include in there that people would actually be able to sort of, that like the fact that it has taken me 5 years to get to where I am now, I could basically show other people how to shortcut that within 17 hours if they really stick to it and want to practice themselves as well. So I need to think about it. After you explaining curves 2 years ago, you made my life a lot easier. Should I actually explain curves right now as well? Do people understand how curves work, how the fundamentals behind it works? Maybe launch the course entirely and the option to buy a specific section of the course. That's actually a very interesting approach of maybe launching tiny areas, and then people could decide which area they want to open, if that makes sense. So I could, for example, say that if you want to learn more about blending, there would be probably 2 hours of training on blending. And then you could decide to buy that for $19 or something like that. I have to say that would be a pretty big money milking machine. That would be, I would probably feel like I'm robbing people a little bit by doing that, because I would be targeting people who can't afford the whole course, and they would, at the end of the day, pay more money for the course if they get interested and start paying separately for all of these different sections. Because if I would have 10 sections there and each section costing $29 or $19 or whatever, it would most likely end up costing more at the end than selling the course at once. But I guess that's just how it's always. If you buy more, you get it for less money. So in a sense, that's a very good business strategy, but I have to think about how I would actually then bring that into reality. Okay, people want to know, or at least someone wants to know how curves work, so let's get into that. We've been streaming now for 1 hour. I will still go. If questions keep on rolling, I will probably continue for another 30 minutes or so. We have a good 20-ish people here, which is nice to see. So yeah, curves. This is going to be easy to explain. So let's make this really big here. I forgot that curves don't enlarge while you make it bigger. But yeah, basically, in curves, we have red, green, and blue. This affects all of your color and lightness levels, okay? Then we have red, green, and blue separately. And I am going to explain this most likely by adding an image here. And let me just do it with this. This is simple enough to explain with. So let's add a curve here. And I think I'm running out of my mouse battery. Or maybe I'm not. So let's start out with the RGB. Here we can adjust the brightness of our image. We are not going to affect the colors. We're just going to adjust the brightness. On the right side, we have the bright areas, and you can see it here from the gradient. This is telling us that the very edge here on the top is all of the white, in other words, highlights in our image. In this case, we are talking about these tiny stars. And if you look really, really carefully, you can see these tiny specks of light popping up here on the bottom, which means these stars. It's these tiny light sources that Photoshop detects that this is where we have like brighter areas. The same is with cameras. Same is, basically if you open a DSLR and you put the histogram on, you can see the dark and bright areas of your image. And you necessarily don't want to have something all the way at the left or very all the way at the right, because this means that then your image would be overexposed or underexposed if it's too dark. So we have light areas, and then we have the darker areas here on the bottom left, and then we see the histogram behind, which is really important to remember, because this histogram shows us what type of lightness levels do we have in our image. And we can clearly see that we have a pretty dark image. We have a lot of almost 100% black areas here on the bottom right, which shows up here on the histogram as those very dark areas. So if we want to lift the blacks, in other words, just increase the brightness of the dark areas in our image, we would lift this up here from the bottom. And you can see that that starts to brighten up the very dark areas. And we can grab this curve from any point. We can grab it here from the middle, which means that it evenly brightens all of the values between the black and the white. So here we're going to get a really even sort of brightness slider, if you could call it that. And I'm not going to go in depth like all of the things you can achieve here. I think it's more important just to understand why it works the way it works, and then you can make up your mind how to use it yourself. But a very common way, there's different types of curves. You don't really have to know them, but some people use the S curve for contrast. This just crushes a bit of the blacks down and increases the brightness of the whites. You could achieve the same by just coming here to the brightness and contrast slider, increasing the brightness and increasing the contrast. Same exact effect could be applied with that. Okay? I'm going to reset this, and there's this little reset button here on the bottom. If you click on that, it resets everything on the curve. And this is basically how you can then brighten stuff. If I want to brighten only the dark areas, the bright areas, I can bring this all the way to the left, and you can see how it starts to brighten our image here immediately. And in a sense, I can also bring this all the way to the right to make the darks even darker. So up means that we're making white or dark points wider, and then here to the left or down we can either crush highlights or we can increase highlights. And you can achieve the exact same with brightness and contrast by increasing brightness or decreasing brightness, but you don't have as wide of a selection of areas where you can do this. And you could crush like 3 points here, and you could make the areas between only there a bit brighter. So you will be selecting essentially some of the areas here, for example, the very white points, and make those brighter. Another cool thing about the curve tool is that there is this hand. And what this hand does is that when you click on it and you click on a color, it shows you on the curve what lightness value this color or this basically lightness is showing for us. So you can see if I put here to the darker areas, it's shifting on the bottom left corner between these different shades of dark. Okay? And immediately when I put it on a star, this jumps all the way to the right top corner, because that's where our bright areas live. And then if I put it here in the middle, you're going to see that this is going to like go somewhere in the middle. But most of our stuff is going to be laying here where the histogram has the most information. And if I keep the hand here on the blue areas, you can see that this constantly almost stays on that area, because that's where we have that amount of light basically. So what you can do is you can grab these points. If you want to make this shade, or not this shade, but this brightness area brighter, you can click on this and drag, and it creates a point based on that point. You could limit it by saying that I want to limit it here. So you can add a point to the areas where the blues are, and you can say I want to only adjust the blacks from this area in between. So then you could put the hand here and you could increase, and you can see that we are barely adjusting the center at all, because we just sort of we made that point. Okay, I want everything from this point below be adjusted. And then you can determine yourself if you want it to be brighter or if you want it to be darker. You will never be able to get as precise with this that it wouldn't affect the areas here at all, because that's what we have masks for. But this is sort of to just understand that those, you can limit the areas where in between you can adjust, and you have a very variety of range when it comes to what you can achieve, what type of different values you can pull up and down. So that is basically the explanation on the RGB, in other words, the lighting. Then we can select the different values here, red, green, and blue, the three main colors. And let's start with the red. First off, this now works exactly the same way as it worked with the lighting, except we are now introducing color. So if I bring now this to the left here, you can see that we are introducing red to the highlighted areas of our image. And if I bring this up, you can see that we are introducing the most red to the darker areas of our image. And if we now use the rule that I can cut out certain areas to not introduce as much red to those areas, I can click to limit. We know that the area is somewhere here, because with the hand, if I go back and forth, you can see that it's putting the dot pretty much between this histogram area here, which means that most of the information is happening on the blue area for sky. And if I look at our image, you can see that that's basically how it is. And this is how you can also start to understand histograms better, because you understand that if we have an image with only one type of texture and one type of color and lighting, it's going to show a very strong upwards histogram at a certain point, because that's where most of the information lies. So now if I would want to add more red to our shadows, I would create a first point here, and then I would drag this up. And you can see that we are introducing red to the shadows. But we are also introducing a bit of cyan to the sky. And the reason why this happens is that when I pull this point up, it brings the points past this point a bit down. And we can limit this further by just adding more points here. And now we can get only reds to that very dark area there. If we don't have these points, if we only go to red and we start bringing it up here from the middle, we're introducing even amount of red everywhere. But if we add a cut point here and we add these points overall around the whole curve, we can determine that I want a bit of red to the very dark areas by lifting it up, or we can bring it to the right and introduce more cyan to the dark areas. So it gets a bit complicated at this point, because you need to understand the opposite colors on the spectrum. And this is pretty simple. If you have red, green, and blue, you are going to have cyan, magenta, and yellow on the other side. So we have RGB, CMY. That's all you need to remember. And I'm going to oversimplify this for you, because this basically, when you understand this point, then you're going to understand all of the different color grading tools, including selective color and so on. And in my courses, I also go through, at least in Photoshop for photographers, I go through very in depth how selective color and these work. So we are having red, and we have green, and we have blue. And then we have cyan, magenta, and then we have yellow. Okay. RGB, CMY. And when we do a thing like a curve, actually I want to bring this into Let me create it again. No, I'm actually just going to create selections around these so I can get them separate. Don't worry about what I'm doing now. I'm just trying to bring this to the, where is it? The star image. Or was it here? Oh, it is here. Okay. Yeah, so we have now red, green, blue, CMY, cyan, magenta, yellow. So if I go here to the red, the opposite of red here on the spectrum is cyan, which means that if I bring this to the right or left, we are gonna get like red color. If we bring it to the left, we're gonna get red color to the brighter areas of our image, because the bright areas are here on the top right. If I bring this down, we are introducing cyan, which you can see here. The opposite of red here on the color spectrum is cyan. So we are introducing more cyan to the brighter areas. Or we can introduce more reds to the darker areas or more cyan to the darker areas. And this works for each of these the exact same way. If I click on the green and I bring the green from the top highlights here to the left, we are introducing a lot of green to the brighter areas of our image. And if I bring it down, we're going to introduce magenta to the brighter areas of our image. And vice versa with the darker. Green, magenta. So you can see that this is how it works. Opposite of red is cyan, opposite of green is magenta, opposite of blue is yellow. And when you memorize this, you can come here, you can think in a way that, hey, I want to add a little bit of yellows to my highlights. And you would immediately know, okay, in order for me to add yellow, I need to come to the blue slider or the blue curve and bring this down in order to add yellow to the highlights. Or I want to add a little bit of colder blues to my highlights or colder blues to my shadows. You come here and you bring it to the up. You don't necessarily have to remember which way is what, because you're going to see it either way in the effect when you do it. So if that's an extra added sort of layer of complexity for you that you need to memorize, like which side you're going to get what color, that's just simple way to remember it is that the main color that you see is always here on the upper side. So here in the red, all of the areas on the left side on the top is red. Here, all of the sides on the left top here are green. And then here on the blue, all of the ones here on the left side are blue. And the other side is then the opposite, which is cyan, magenta, yellow. And that is basically how curves work. So now you can start color grading very professionally immediately. You can think. Of course, now vision is the thing that plays the most in this. You need to think like, what do you want to achieve? If I would want to make this gray looking mountain a bit more blue, I would probably achieve it by going to the blue, limiting these points very strongly to the middle. So you would add these points here, and then it would bring a little bit of that blue into the shadows. Okay, so you could make those very dark areas a bit more blue. That is maybe a bit too extreme. So by lifting that point and then we're going to get a more gradual difference to those blacks. So you can see if I crush this too far, then it's actually only going to affect those very dark areas here. It's only going to add that color to the blue to those very, very dark areas. And the more up I bring this, the more gradual the shift is. You can think it as a gradient or a blend if slider. If I have a blend if slider and I bring the darker areas down like this, we're going to have a very, very rough transition. But the moment I separate these, we are making the difference a bit wider. So you can think of these points here in the blend if slider in the same way as the points on the curve, for example. So in a sense, every tool in Photoshop is connected to these type of rules. Gradients determine how soft things are. Curves determine, in a curve you have also a gradient of different light and different types of like shades and levels. And when you put points further away from each other, it's going to be a softer gradual difference between the two. And that's it. That is my short lesson, or pretty long lesson actually, 17-minute long lesson on how curves work. I hope that cleared things up. Just remember this is probably the most important thing to remember. RGB CMY. RGB CMY. then you will basically know how to use any color grading tool in Photoshop. And in color balance, you can see the same. Red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, yellow. Other side is red, other side is cyan, other side is green, other side is magenta, other side is blue, other side is yellow. And with here, with color balance, you can achieve the same, but you don't have as much freedom again, because it's only a detection by the program. AI determines or looks at the darker shades, and then it's okay, I can add a bit of blues to my shadows. But with this, you're not going to be able to get that difference if you want the blues only to be accessed on that one area. Instead, it's going to be available everywhere. Okay. Hi Julius, do you have some sort of a recipe for creating? What's the process generally? For example, you photograph nice place, then what? Add cloud, star, subject, foreground element. I don't know. I have to say that there's zero recipe when it comes to my creative process. It always starts with what am I gonna create? And as soon as I just had a chat, I actually did a podcast with Tom Nosk. He's a very talented photographer and artist from Australia. And I had a chat with him that for creators and creative people, it's better to not force creativity, but instead of forcing creativity, you should force a habit of creating daily, because that is going to fuel your creative juices to the point where you don't have to feel like, hey, what do I create today? Because the more you sit in front of a blank canvas, like the longer you sit in front of a blank canvas, the better for your creativity, in my opinion, at least. So I don't have any recipe, unfortunately. I have a lot of technical stuff that I can teach and show, but generally speaking, no one can teach you a creativity. Someone can lead you towards how you can live a life that supports your creativity, but no one can sort of teach you how to create something creatively from your brain. Like getting ideas is sort of your own job, and there are things that support that and practices that support that, and my practice for supporting that is to force the habit of creating as often as possible. So yeah, that's basically that, and I think it would be pretty good to end on that note as well. I'm gonna take one more question, so think what you would want me to show, and then I will show that. Someone said, hey Julius, could you explain the basics of painting in Photoshop? The issue with this is now that my drawing tablet is somewhere there on the shelf. It will take me quite a long time to set that up because I haven't downloaded the drivers or even installed the software on my computer. And for painting, you sort of need a drawing tablet. If you don't have a drawing tablet, you will not be able to paint in a realistic way. But I would say my best practices for painting in Photoshop is to first create a rough sketch. And when you have created the rough sketch, you simply start filling this sketch in with color, and you start to create different shades. At the end of the day, images is just different shades and different textures. And you can replicate that by just adding different colors. So I actually would, I don't know if I even want to show this, but it's so simple to think of painting in Photoshop. And in general, think of painting and drawing or whatever it's going to be, because you can create a 2D object like this very easily. That looks now very 2D. It's just one color, and you can make your color a bit lighter and softer, and you can clip mask this into the sphere, make the top side a bit more bright, and then you take a darker shade of blue and you make the top part, the bottom part a bit darker, and all of a sudden you bring three-dimensional stuff into it. And you could take this further by adding a brighter speck of light here at the edge. So like painting, you need to really approach in a way that you first create a very rough color, and then from there on you start to slowly make things a bit more realistic. If you want to make this a glowing one, you could, I haven't really practiced this in ages, but you could basically create like a speck of light here. But it's so simple to create simple sort of shapes in Photoshop, and that is just, oh, we can't see. yeah, but basically what I showed is that you can, that was, by the way, the first time only. That was the first time. We streamed for 1 hour and 20 minutes without me forgetting it. So, but I did forget it, so that's sad. Because this is the only thing I hate about streaming, is if I'm super into something, then I forget that. Happens every stream, at least once or so. But what I was trying to show is that you can have a 2D object that is blue, and then you can just introduce a little bit more brighter shade of blue and then darker shade of blue to make it 3-dimensional. This is pretty self-explanatory, and then you can add a speck of light into it to make it shiny, for example. And you have endless tools to change the colors of things on the go. It's basically all up to your creativity. You can create whatever you want with just color and a brush. And it's not rocket science. There's not a lot of technique to it other than just understanding how shapes and things work in general in nature. Some shapes are hard to recreate, like trees. That requires a lot of work. But then for that, even you have some brushes. I, for example, have, where is it? I think in my tree brushes here. I have, for example, created some brushes like these that are maybe more so necessary when we're talking about refining. So if you have a tree, you can refine the edge with this. But like with this, you could really quickly create like sort of a thing that looks like a tree. And then you could introduce different colors to this and like slowly start to make it more realistic. This is just now a very rough example, and you would definitely probably not do it with a brush like this. But I want to just let everyone understand that it's pretty easy to start creating like different shapes and different like things in Photoshop. Now I'm just doing very random stuff here, but you get the idea that with the painting is that like most people give up after like 2 hours, when with painting you basically, it's the equivalent of doing something for 2 minutes for an image and 2 hours for a painting. It just takes like 10 times or like 100 times as much time in the beginning as editing an image does. So at first everything is going to look super bad, and then slowly it's going to build like further and further. Thanks, that is good advice. Well, I'm glad you agree. I'm sorry that I can't give you like sort of a shortcut or a recipe, because I don't think there is one. So I hope that thought process sort of helps you to better maybe approach creativity and creating in general. How about sharpening tools when you are finalizing your artwork? Unsharp mask or high pass filter, which of these two is better? Neither. Sorry, neither one. I use these tools myself. I'm gonna use my Stream Deck again. I have a cool Stream Deck. I'll just change the profile here. Photoshop, and then now I need to just menu shortcuts, and then we are gonna open Topaz Sharpen AI. Okay, so I use Topaz for sharpening. This is a very good, it at the same time it suppresses your noise, it removes any blur, it can make your image out of focus. Like even here, can't really see the difference that much now, but I use these AI tools to sharpen because I found out that these are way better than anything I could do manually. Nowadays they're like very, very, very good with these AI tools. So I use Topaz for that stuff nowadays. That's a bit unrealistic effect because of the stars. But I remove noise with Topaz and I sharpen with Topaz. That's pretty much it. And if you want to get a very simple answer why I do it like this, I don't have to do anything else than show it on one of these images, for example. Yeah, so here you can see that this is just a pile of noise. Let me take the noise reduction actually off completely. So if I open this now here, this is, by the way, the last thing I will show, then I will go because I need to still go work out at the gym, which I'm afraid at this time of the day is here in Germany so full that I'm going to be annoyed, but whatever. Okay, so you can see this is just a huge pile of noise here in the foreground. I could remove noise with Camera Raw or with some denoising tools here in Photoshop. Will look really bad. It will never look like Topaz makes it look. So if I open Topaz denoise here, And by the way, there's a segue to this because I'm an affiliate for them. So if you really like it, I can put a link. No, I'm not going to do that. But yes, I am an affiliate for them. I just don't remember the link, so I'm not going to do it. So I could come here, for example, to AI clear, remove a lot of noise and enhance sharpness. Look what happens. This is the difference. I'm not sure if I can, no, I'm all the way zoomed in, but you can see how crazy that difference is. It doesn't only remove noise, it creates new detail into your images. So like I couldn't use this image without this tool. Like I just couldn't. Look at those rocks. Like it's just a mess of noise. And then when I slide this slider there, it's like night and day. I can apply this effect to show a bit better, and I'll also apply the sharpening effect on this afterwards, so then you can really see how like well this works. If you have a bad computer, the downside of these programs is that it's going to take forever for you to process everything. Like I have pretty much the second best computer, consumer level computers like specs that you can get, and it took me also like not long, but probably half a minute or 20 seconds or so. But you can see the difference. If I go to the open versus Topaz denoise, it just makes such a big difference. And I can go to the Topaz Sharpen. Like this is so good. Like imagine if you are someone who does composites. For example, CMYK, you do composites and you use stock images quite often. If you have an image that you really want to use, but the quality is just not enough in that image, these are the tools to save you from a bad day. Like this is just how it works. So I could here you can sort of decide, like that's crazy. Like look at that sharpening difference. For some reason it always takes time to update, but this is too strong, of course, because I have the settings too high. But if I like change the settings here, but this is literally, you don't have to understand anything. It's basically does what you tell it to do. If your image is very noisy or very blurry, then you just click on that setting. But here, this is now before and after. Let me actually apply that so it's easier. And these are not super, I mean, yes, sort of expensive tools, but considering how much they save time and energy and how cool it is to play around with the software or the plugin, like, I think it's 100 million% the money. I think it's $70 or something for one of these. And if you buy multiple ones, it gets cheaper. So instead of, if you buy Topaz AI, Denoiser, and Sharpen AI, instead of paying 150 or 160 like you would if you buy them separately, you could get them probably for like 100 in total, 120 or something like that. What about Lightroom? Is it good for bad PC? I hate it. I'm sorry to say it. I haven't used Lightroom in years. I haven't opened that software in years, and I just don't like it at all. It's very slow, very unnecessary for what I do, because I have Camera Raw in Photoshop, and Camera Raw is the funny thing is that Camera Raw is Lightroom. The engine that Lightroom uses is called Camera Raw. All the sliders and everything, it is Camera Raw. It's just a fancier version of Camera Raw with some other tools like organizing and whatnot. But for that, I use a different program called Photo Mechanic, which is way faster. Like I can scroll through my images so fast here, and I can tag them and like choose them. So if I come home from a shoot, all I need to do is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I just go through these images, and every time I see something I like, I just hit T. I tag the image, and then I can come here to the all and click on tagged, and it shows me all the images that I want to select, and then I can remove the rest. And it all happens here inside this program. In Lightroom, it's way slower, and you can't do it that efficiently, in my opinion. Yeah, Camera Raw is basically just a stripped down, uglier version of Lightroom, and it's not even that ugly anymore. I think they made it look way better than it was. They made it slower than it was though, which is a bit of a shame. It worked way better in the past, but you have the exact same editing engine here that Lightroom uses. But yeah, let me show the difference now. So this is when I opened it, and this is after those plugins. Like naturally, it's not going to be 100% perfect for an image that was that bad straight from the beginning, but only thing you need to pay attention to is that rock, how it doesn't only remove noise, but it creates new detail in there to make it appear better quality. Like from a bit further away, those rocks look phenomenal, and it did a really good job saving my foreground. So yeah, that's just, if you are interested in sharpening and denoising, whatever, that those are the tools. I do have affiliate link that saved. Actually, I said I wouldn't market anything to you, but because I do have an affiliate code that saves you money on it, and it also gives me some. I don't even know how much it gives. I don't remember, but let me see, affiliate area. Okay. Will show blank if not logged in. Just a second. I want to give the link because I think it's like a 10 or 15 bucks off from the software. So if you are interested in that, then it's better that you still stay for a second. I'll quickly log into my thing. Huh? I'm having a hard time remembering because I shared this account with Michelle. There's I think you can have 2 people under the same account. So yeah, that's cool. Let me now go here so I can send the link here. Your referral URL. Fucking my mouse is about to run out of battery. So let me just test that this is working. Okay, so I am an affiliate for them. If you use this link, the way how I think, or if I remember right, it's a while since I became a partner with them through the affiliate program. I think if you click on that link and you buy it within the next 30 days, then the cookie will stay in there, and I will get a small cut from the signing up price or whatever. So yeah, if you are interested in getting Topaz, use that link if you want. I don't care if you use it or not. I just wanted to give you a chance to get a little bit discount from it. I think I even had the code for the discount. Wait a second. Or was there? I don't think there was even a code needed, to be honest. I think you just get discount when you use that link. And Mike, by the way, I'm not sure if you're still there, but I just now saw your message that a random question, have you looked at Discord yet? I will give you my tag. I haven't looked into it yet, and I won't have time to dive into the thing within the next few days because I do have some ad videos that I need to create. So I want to have my full focus on that. What softwares do you suggest for bad PC? I can't really recommend anything else than what I use because that's what I like the most, and I don't know anything else than that. Yeah, so my commission rate is 20% from this. Yeah. Seems like not a lot of people have actually been interested in it because I'm not sure if I'm allowed to enclose this, but I've shared the link once somewhere briefly, just mentioning hey, swipe up if you are interested to get it as well. And 1,552 people visited it and 16 people out of those bought it. I mean, it's an okay percentage of people who just initially get it, but still it's a bit not my biggest income stream, so to say. So yeah, that's the Topaz Labs. It's very helpful, very useful, especially for people who, as I said, create composites, which I think a lot of you do. But hey, that was it for today. I think we went through a pretty good set of useful things. Not a lot of things, but at least a few helpful nuggets here and there. I think that's all that we sort of need. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else. I'm gonna eat something a little bit and then go to the gym immediately. Yeah, I don't know. I'm out of words. I've been talking for the past 1.5 hours, so I think I'm gonna just end it at this. I will give a little bit time again before I end. So you can ask some questions from me if you're interested. Most likely now all of you have asked everything that you have to ask. So yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much, man. Thank you for being here. Love the stream, man. Have a good Friday and weekend. You too. I'm glad you also enjoyed, and I'd love to see you always here, just like sticking up, even though you are probably the most skilled artist already that I know, like currently. Like, you know so much, and your skills have increased like so much in the past. I don't know. I just like to see that you are hanging out even though you know everything that I'm showing, and I know that you know pretty much everything I'm showing. But at least you heard about Topaz now, if like that interest. Thank you so much. No worries. You're just keeping me company while editing. Yeah, that's what I thought it would be. Have a good workout. Thank you, Timur, or however I pronounce your name. I'm so sorry. I'm really bad with names. But yeah, okay. I don't know how to end these streams. I'm very awkward when it comes to that. So I'm just going to hit stop streaming, and I'll see you in the next stream. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message on Instagram. There's a good chance that I unfortunately probably won't see it because I'm not on Instagram as much anymore. I check my messages, but not every day nowadays. So I have developed this way of maybe answering messages every 2 weeks or so I can go through all of them. Because if I build a habit of checking messages every single day, that becomes a bit stressful because there's so many messages to go through. So I rather just take 1 day out of every 2 weeks to just do messages, and then I sit on my phone for like 6 hours messaging all of you back. Lately it has been a bit rough, so I don't think I have done it as much as I used to, and I'm sorry about everyone if you felt like I've sort of left you just standing there without an answer. But just know that I do care about all of you messages and questions and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm just a human. I can't like make it to every single situation and try to be there for everyone. So I'm sorry if anyone has ever felt in a way that I'm not sort of present or anymore answering anyone. Yeah, I don't think I need to explain myself, but yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next